56 men are about to sign their own death warrants. If this war is lost, every one of them hangs for treason, and right after they sign it, the war very nearly is lost. This is the part of the story most people don't see coming, because the American Revolution almost ended in total failure, in the freezing cold, less than 2 years after it began. For over a year after Lexington and Concord, most colonists still weren't fighting for a new country. They wanted their old rights back inside the British Empire. That changes in early 1776, when a fiery pamphlet called Common Sense spreads through the colonies, arguing plainly that reconciliation with a king is a fantasy. By July, the Continental Congress isn't debating whether to protest anymore. They're debating whether to become traitors, on purpose, in writing, with their names attached. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence is adopted. It doesn't just list grievances, it declares 13 colonies to be a new, independent nation. There is no turning back from this point. Every signer knows that if the British win, this document becomes the evidence used to execute them. Independence is declared. The war to actually win it is going terribly. Weeks after the declaration, the largest British invasion force ever assembled arrives in New York, over 30,000 troops. George Washington's poorly trained, poorly supplied Continental Army is outmatched and outmaneuvered again and again. New York falls. Washington's army is pushed back across New Jersey in a retreat that looks less like strategy and more like survival. By December 1776, Washington doesn't just have a losing army. He has an army that's about to disappear completely, because most of his soldiers' enlistments run out at the end of the year, and nobody expects them to re-sign. On Christmas night 1776, with his army on the verge of dissolving, Washington makes one of the boldest gambles of the entire war. Crossing the ice-choked Delaware River at night to launch a surprise attack on a garrison of Hessian soldiers at Trenton. It's not a big battle, but it might be the single most important gamble in American history, because if it fails, there may not be an American army left by January. The surprise attack works. Trenton falls. Days later, Washington strikes again at Princeton. 2 small victories, but they arrive at exactly the moment the revolution needs proof of life. Enlistments are extended. Morale, on the edge of collapse, holds. The winter of 1777 to 1778 is the lowest point of the entire war. Washington's army camps at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, undersupplied, underfed, and freezing. Soldiers march without shoes, leaving bloody footprints in the snow. Disease kills more men that winter than any battle has. And yet, this freezing, starving camp is where the ragged militia that stumbled through Lexington and Concord finally becomes something else, a real army. A Prussian officer named Baron von Steuben arrives and, despite barely speaking English, begins drilling the Continental Army into a disciplined fighting force, teaching formations, sanitation, and battlefield coordination that will define the rest of the war. The army that walks out of Valley Forge in the spring of 1778 is not the same army that walked in. But surviving isn't winning. Britain still holds major cities. The war is still, by every reasonable measure, not going America's way. What America needs isn't grit anymore. It needs an ally powerful enough to fight the British Navy on equal terms. And 3,000 miles away, in the court of the King of France, a decision is about to be made that will decide the entire war. That decision, and the siege that ends the war for good, is next.